For my part in this workshop, encourage you to go to a website called ourjourneytosmile.org, and there you can familiarize yourselves with many, many videos, short 3-minute videos. And some of these videos show the Afghan peace volunteers. Had I been presenting, and I've decided not to, I've turned my time over to Mohammed Abbas from Yemen. So I just want to say that had I been presenting, I would have wanted to emphasize that there are people who are simply going out to mountainsides to collect twigs and scrub brush so that they can heat water, and they're risking their lives doing so because they are mistaken by drone surveillance for possible enemies, and again and again and again, people have been killed, maimed, their lives destroyed and altered forever because the drones, the special operations forces, the cybersecurity, the joint special groups have made horrendous mistakes and targeted and killed civilians. So I want to say that in this workshop to humanize the face of war, we're very, very fortunate to be joined by people who, in many ways, can never escape our wars. The wars will never end for them. They're people who have lived in these war zones. And they very graciously agreed to spend 20 minutes each. And so I'd like to just quickly say who our guests are today. And I know we're doing a little bit of setup as we speak, but we'll be joined today by Noor. Noor is from Pakistan. She grew up in Islamabad. She went to college at Vassar. And she's going to speak to us from the perspective of somebody who has been in Pakistan and in the United States working for peace. We're also going to be joined by Sarah. Sarah grew up in Baghdad. She's become a dentist and an oral surgeon, and she has gone back and forth between the United States and Iraq, and she's now going to work alongside Tom Faces, who many of us know, with the Baby Tooth Project, and will also be working on exchanges of correspondence between people in Iraq and in the United States. Mohammed Abbas has just come to us from Yemen and DC, and he's himself been very, very involved in trying to advance civil society within Yemen. And then finally we have Rooj, who is also from Yemen and who has gone back to her country and come back to the United States with a very vital project to inform and to educate people in the United States. So thank you so much, Noor, for starting us off, and thank you to all of you for being here. This is an incredibly rich opportunity for us.
Thank you for that introduction. My name is Noor. I am the anti-drone campaign coordinator for Code Pink. Most of you know who Code Pink is, but we are an anti-war women's initiated organization. I'm in the DC office, and I just started a job in January, and it has been very busy thus far. I started off with the nomination of John Brennan, which was certainly an eventful occasion. We disrupted that hearing, and Wright played a big part in that too. Unfortunately, he was confirmed, but by a very, very small number of votes. So we count that as a slim victory, if any. So what I want to talk about today is first to preface my position as a Pakistani by letting you know that even though I am from Pakistan, I certainly come from a place of privilege of not living in the tribal territories where drone strikes take place. A misconception that people often have is that drone strikes occur in the same way in every country where they take place, and they don't. Drone strikes in Pakistan are certainly very different from drone strikes in Yemen. And the way that drone strikes take place in Pakistan is that they take place in the tribal territories, which are known as FATA, F-A-T-A. And it's the size of Massachusetts, and that's how small the area is. And it's in between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And what we need to understand about this region is that it has been historically marginalized by an array of people, starting with the British Empire, when they used these tribal territories as a buffer zone for separating Afghanistan and Pakistan at the height of the British Raj, because they were conspiring to secede from the regions that were under the threat of partition. So this was a tactical move by the British Empire to create this buffer zone where they could ruthlessly bomb and use these people for their own advantage. Something that they didn't realize is that no matter what you do, you can't break the bonds of the people. And so we have a very interesting personality of this region that is very distinct from the rest of Pakistan, and that is that they are all ethnically Pashtun. And that is an ethnicity that straddles both Afghanistan and Pakistan. And something that a lot of people have talked about is the code of conduct that governs this region. And that's something that's really important to understand. Medea Benjamin, who I work with at Code Pink, wrote about this a little, and I was glad that people were finally bringing it up. And it's called Pashtunwali, and it's an ancient code of conduct that binds these people together. And the most important standards of this code of conduct are hospitality and revenge, which is known as badal. And what badal does is that your responsibility is to your people. So when your area is under attack, you are governed by this code of conduct to defend them to the best of your ability. And in my opinion, this is a very, very beautiful, it's a beautiful code, and that's why this area is known to be extremely hospitable and to be very generous. And unfortunately, this code has been exploited by the many visitors that come to this land, such as the Taliban and the Mujahideen and other extremists that have unfortunately taken over the region. And then we have hospitality, and basically you have to open your door to and host people of all the tribes in the region, if they are Pashtun, and there are many different tribes, but if you're a Pashtun, you have to open your door to and host these people. And this is how it's always been. Unfortunately, it has been exploited and used by factions such as the Taliban that use it to their advantage to live in these homes and use them as bases. So I wanted to start off by giving you a sense of the land, because often we think that the capital city of Pakistan, Islamabad, is very similar to the places we're bombing. It's not. We sit in our homes, we watch it on television, we say that it's a violation of our sovereignty, but we don't understand that where this is taking place is an area that's been so historically marginalized that we can separate ourselves from it. So while we're trying to shift the American perspective on it, we also need to do some work at home. So it's important to have allies on both sides of the ocean. And also, one of the reasons I'm starting off is because I wanted to read some victims' narratives from Medea's book that I found the most powerful ones that I think speak to the terrorism perpetrated by drones. And after that, I'd like to have a moment of silence. I think that's always key to any event surrounding drones. Part of the terror of drones is that the victims do not have any acknowledgement. And that is kind of the duality of the secret war. And people often ask me what the difference is between fighter jets raining terror on lands when it's a war that's recognized, and what the difference is between drones doing the same thing. And what I always tell them is nobody understands drones. and they are a mysterious, mythical creature. And part of them being, I guess, the birds of terror, as some people have called them recently, is that everything is secret. These lives are not acknowledged, they're not counted for. And the difficulty in humanizing this war is that these narratives are hidden. So we have important projects like the Naming the Dead project that the Bureau of Investigative Journalism is doing, where they're trying to track every single name and every single person. It's certainly very difficult, with estimates of at least 3,500 to 4,000 civilian casualties, but they're doing it. They're piecing it bit by bit. We also have something called the drone quilt that Leah Bulger is taking over it, where people are sending quilts with a victim's narrative on it in any way you want. It could be somebody's face, it could be somebody's age, but these are important ways to bring these stories to the forefront. So we need to keep trying to do that. And an important way to do that is to mourn these lives, because they often have not had the privilege of even being acknowledged by their Pakistani government. So the most we can do is do that here. So I'm going to read some of the pieces that speak most to me. So one of the primary drone documenters in Pakistan, his name is also Noor. It's Noor Mir. He's a Pakistani photographer, and this really spoke to me. He said, "There are just pieces of flesh lying around after a strike. You can't find bodies, so the locals pick up the flesh and curse America. They say that America is killing us inside our own country, inside our own homes, and only because we are Muslims." The second one is from Palestine, and it says, according to Hamdi Shakur's group, Israeli drones killed at least 825 people between 2006 and 2011, the majority civilians. According to one study, the majority of children living in Gaza suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the constant buzzing and bombing of Israeli death machines. "It's continuous watching us, especially at night," said Nabil, a Gaza mechanic and father of 8. "You can't sleep, you can't watch television, it frightens the kids. When they hear it, they say, it is going to hit us." And another important narrative is that of the pilots. Sometimes we say that they're so uninvolved that they are sitting here and they treat it like a game. But something that we need to understand about games is that you are involved in what you are doing. You are fixated on the lives of these people that you are following and putting into what they call a disposition matrix, which is basically summing up the personality traits and trends of these suspected targets. So if it looks as though you're traveling in a group of 4 people who look exactly the same, they're going to say you're a target. So what we need to understand is that these pilots are intimately involved in what they do, and that's what disgusts me the most, is that they are both intimately involved but can separate themselves at the same time. So here is one person who actually came out and talked about the horror and anguish inflicted upon him as a result of being a drone pilot. He wrote a book called The Predator, and his name is Matt Morton. And he said, in one case, he described how he had carefully planned to blow up a group of supposed rebels who were standing around a truck. Suddenly, 2 kids on a bicycle appeared on the screen. There was an older boy, about 10, and a younger boy balanced on the handlebars. They were laughing and riding alongside the truck. Panicking, Martin, the author, wanted to stop the missile, but it was too late. The sensor operator had already released it. Mesmerized by approaching calamity, we could only stare in abject horror as a silent missile bore down upon them out of the sky. When the screens cleared, I saw the bicycle blown 20 feet away. One of the tires was still spinning. The bodies of the 2 little boys lay bent and broken amongst the bodies of the insurgents. And one last one that I think is important, and this is a figure that people talk about a lot when they talk about drones, is Tariq Aziz. He was a 16-year-old boy, and prior to being killed, he was part of a jirga, which is a community gathering. And he took place in the first community jirga in the capital city of Islamabad ever on drone strikes. Shahzad Akbar, who is a lawyer for the Center for Constitutional Rights in Islamabad, was approached by a journalist from the tribal territories, whose name is Kareem, whose brother and son had been killed in drone strikes. He found out about Shahzad Akbar and approached him to sue the perpetrators of drone strikes. So what Shahzad Akbar, this lawyer, had been doing was training people on the ground to document these casualties, because often they go unnoticed and unrecognized in the rubble and the devastation. So he had been training Tariq Aziz how to use a camera to capture the civilian casualties in Waziristan. And he had been at this community jirga, which was well attended, well covered by the BBC. Representatives from Reprieve UK were there. Imran Khan, who is a very popular political figure, who's already been president in Pakistan, was there. Tons and tons of people. And when he returned home, a missile killed him. So that's what I wanted to end with, was that we can't brush these off as coincidences when we talk about how these casualties take place. Tariq Aziz was definitely on somebody's radar as somebody who was documenting these casualties. And people often forget what his role was, and his role was vital to covering and filling the gaps in the drone war. And he was killed. So I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but I can't brush this aside as a mistake. So if we could just focus for about a minute on these lives that have been lost, and contemplate, and maybe we can discuss this after it's over, how we can stitch these narratives back together and honor these lives as they're being lost, because if we give them the attention that they deserve, and bring them to the forefront to try and stitch their stories together. Whose children are they? Whose mom is it? Whose dad is it? Where did they live? What did they do? We can begin to give them the recognition that they deserve. So we could just have a moment of silence before we begin the next presentation. All done, but now I'm going to give the mic over to Sarah, the next presenter.
So thanks all for coming and joining us and hearing all these kind of stories. First of all, I will start with a simple introduction about myself. My name is Sarah, and I'm from Iraq. I lived all my life in Iraq. I left recently, 2010 actually. I came here. I went to Syria and I stayed for 1 year, then Jordan. Then I came here to study at the University of Rochester for a year, but I had to cut my studies and go back home for personal issues. Back home I finished my degree, which is I have a bachelor in dentistry, in dental science and oral surgery. I'm not practicing right now because I have some things to deal with, like this. I came to the US in March for the UN conference the UN Commission on the Status of Women, where I wanted to present, but I couldn't. I came too late. And it's about violence against women's rights. And then I also came for this. I had it also planned to come here to present at this conference, which I'm really thankful for. Well, I didn't write a speech like just words and saying them, because most of the time when I do that, I have notes and I look at them and I never stick to these cards. I read so much because I had so much to say, and then when I see this, like, oh, I get tempted and I don't stick to it. So I thought of a way and said I should like just stick to a script, because I know this, like, I want some things to be said and I don't want to be lost between my words. So I thought that I should write a poem. I write poetry, and I thought the only thing that can like put me in a line is poetry. So I had to write a poem, and that's what I did. So I will share with you my poems. I call my poems my speech, my poem, my life. Today, I should celebrate. I should jump of happiness, for the war's ended. Yet I'm not. 10 years of occupation in Iraq and the war isn't over. I was 5 when I knew what war means or meant. Or did I? Let's see. I thought it's playing with dolls like it would be my last day. Hearing sounds that are so loud, just staying home. My funny uncle making funny noises, shadow games on the wall, no electricity and no water. I thought it's sanctioned. I had a hero though. I had someone that will save me. I had Superman. 20 years later, and just barely knowing what war means. Let's see again, and take a look. Backing so fast. Grandfather, God bless his soul, taking us to the village where war cannot reach. Father, mother staying behind, and the fear of losing them is the only image that plays in my mind for weeks. War begins. Regime falls. Americans saved us. No electricity, no water. Years passes. 2003, 2004, 2005. Father got a threat because he's a professor at the college. Militias ruling, controlling, government changes, democracy now. Family leaves everything behind, including me. Year after year, walking out of the house, thinking, and talking to the door. I hope I will see you soon. Bodies on the street, no one can touch them, no one can move. The sight of death is everywhere. And the smell of hell is evident on earth. On top of all, I know now that heroes aren't real. I had no Superman. I had to finish my studies though. 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Done, I finished. Time to go home. But where is home? Iraqis are like that. After the war, homeless people in a continuous search to belong. It's the case for me. My country in heart will give my life to serve and save. But where is home? I say it's where the heart is. But what if my heart is far away? where I cannot reach, I will need to search again. Nowadays, the war is over. 60 to 70 life expectancy rate. 33.3% infant mortality rate. 2 million and more Iraqi refugees scattered between countries that don't even want them. 65% of Iraqi living in neglect and poverty. With $120 billion budget for the government. Who takes that? Who knows? Government? An entire country ruled by few? What change? Is that democracy? Being killed for you want to have voice? For being less religious? For being Christian? For being gay? For being different kind of Muslim? For being free? Oh, I definitely have different dictionary. A country ruled by the biggest embassy in the world. I wonder what that is. I'm sorry if I'm being explicit. I will try, I promise. I will try to be more diplomatic now. I will say, we are doing better. Growing economically. Democracy is developing. No, I cannot do it. Health crisis. Fallujah, Hawija, Najaf, and so many more. No one knows, but I will tell you now. Keep it a secret though, because this is how it should go. Important thing, never to be let out. We should bury them alive, yes. The idea I will talk about, it's war. War is the reason. Depleted uranium has been used, as well as white phosphorus. Now I'm confused. All the population were affected, old and young, and kids now too, being poisoned even in their mom's womb. Congenital malformation, sterility, infertility, abnormal cancer types, and infant stability too. No worries though. The word is women decided not to get babies no more. United States says nothing about that. Iraqi elected government will hush anyone who breathes about the subject. And that was just an Iraqi thought and a side note. Everyday explosion, no stability, no morality. People being abducted from their life, from their families, young and healthy, found dead in morgues, better yet, on the streets. April 20, election. April 20, explosion that killed 32 persons. April 20, a protest that started in a small part of the northern part of Iraq. A small village that my father comes from, Hawija it's called, where the people are so simple and so nice. They live on farming and raising animals, peacefully protesting to get some sense into their life, to tell the government, listen to us, asking for simple necessities in life, water, electricity, and on the serious side, for the innocent prisoner to let out. They got killed, not only killed, bombed by the military. 50 persons dead, 150 wounded, badly wounded, but cannot be treated because they should die. They are terrorists. They want to change. And And of course, US are worried about Iraq. They care too much. I'm so touched. I have been told to keep still, not to move, not to speak a word, for I might be killed, or I might get something that I don't like. I will say I said nothing. I was reading a poem that I know nada about, was walking, talking, found it on the ground. Stopping war is in our hands. By letting people know what it does and its implications are. War is easy. Militarization, a plan, attack, boom. We're done. What comes after the war should be gone. Hand in hand we'll spread the word. Tell your friends and pick your sword. Use it as a knife to cut a cake. Never to use it as a weapon to slay a dragon's head, for they are nice creatures after all. And please shout now with me. No to war, no to war. No to war, no to war. No to war, no to war. Thank you.
My name is Rooj Alwazir. I'm originally from Yemen, grew up in DC, and had the privilege to go back home and visit my sister, who has been living there for 4 years now and very active, particularly on this issue. So when I went back, I arrived right when a drone explosion happened. So I guess was faced with that reality and got to know more about the drone war through that. So here's a little presentation that I did for school, but I cut it down just so I can bring it on to here. So next. Originally I had put a sound together, and it was the sound of a drone hovering over the skies, and then a double airstrike happening. For many Yemenis, I wanted to ask you what that sound would mean to you. But for many Yemenis, this sound has become a reminder of fear, death, and destruction. What are drones? Drones come in many, many different sizes. You see Hillary Clinton over here playing with one as if it's a toy. However, this is the drone that has become very familiar to Yemenis, Predator drone. The first US drone strike was in November 2002, and the US drone war is in partnership with the Yemeni government. The Yemeni government has come out and said, yes, we accept the drone strikes, they're killing the terrorists, we're totally okay with it. Under Obama administration, there has been a significant amount of drone increase in terms of raw numbers and in strikes and in geographic areas. So you can see it with this diagram over here. From 2002 there was 1, and then 2012 56, and just this year there's been at least 4 accounted for.
Question, what are the two different colors?
So the darker blue is what the US government has acknowledged, and the lighter blue is what's been reported by human rights organizations.
What are the years?
So 2002, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. So we can see basically under Bush it was 1. As soon as Obama became president, a huge increase. Where are drones flying in Yemen? Pretty much everywhere. It's not like it's targeted in one area like Pakistan, it's all over Yemen. In red, you will see where drones have striked. In orange, you will see where the drones have just been flying over for surveillance, including the capital, Sana'a. This is a quote that really resonated with me by a Yemeni journalist when we were talking about drones. It doesn't matter whether the innocent dies from a UAV, a Tomahawk, or a fighter jet. People have been obsessing over the wrong thing. UAVs rather than the real issue, killing innocents. Killings. These are the headlines of mainstream media. The New York Times, Yemen says strikes against Qaeda bases kills 34. Obama ordered US military strike on Yemen terrorists. CNN, 34 killed in Yemen terror raids. The Washington Post, Yemeni forces launched pre-dawn assault on alleged Al-Qaeda sites. Of course, our mainstream media tells us that these are all militants that deserve to die. In reality, 40 people were killed this day in Majala village by a missile including 14 women and 21 children amongst them. This girl is a 9-year-old girl named Afrah. The US would not acknowledge that it killed anybody, including her. Again, as soon as I arrived, there was a strike. Yemen airstrike kills 10 Qaeda members. US drone kills 5 suspected militants in Yemen. Once again, they claim that militants were killed, when in reality, 12 civilians were killed, including 3 women. And of course, this is not the first case of civilian casualties, nor will it be the last. My brother was wounded from a shrapnel in his chest, liver, and neck, in addition to burns of up to 50% of his body. On May 15, 2012, at least a dozen civilians died in a double airstrike in Ja'ad. Hassan's brother was injured in the second explosion. Now in Yemen, a lot of these drone strikes don't happen, they're not just one strike. They're usually double strikes, just to make sure that the civilian was actually caught. So usually when the first strike hits, people run to make sure to help the person that's just been hit. And when they go help that person, many more end up dying from the second strike. 13-year-old Ali Khadar was injured due to an airstrike and his jaw open. His father explains to me the trauma his son is suffering. He refuses to see his classmates because he is disfigured. One time I hospitalized him because he overdosed on drugs. I believe he wanted to end his life, and it pains me to see that. Of course, private homes have been destroyed as well, like here in Rooj village. I visited this place before and thought that their lives could not be worse. Seeing this destruction last July, I realized I was wrong. These are some footage, these are some photographs that on our trip my sister was able to take. People are afraid to go to weddings because whenever large groups of men gather, they are afraid a drone will hit them. As a result of these killings and destructions, airstrikes have come to terrorize an entire population, making them live in constant fear. The number of miscarriages has increased. People reduce their social gatherings, such as weddings and funerals. And parents are now afraid to send their children to school. Because if they're 3 and they're of 16 years or older, they're a militant. While the Yemeni government is a partner in the war on terror, people still see the US strikes as a breach of sovereignty. There's also a perceived violation of honor, as some tribesmen have expressed concern that the drones are able to see inside their houses and spy on their women. Backlash. What are some of the backlash that we may see in the US? Drones are a declaration of war without declaring it as such. When you are surprised and hit from afar, and if you are an innocent target on the ground, it is going to cause some major repercussions. This is a ad or a graphic made by some Yemeni activists that says no to killing innocent civilians, and holding both the US and the Yemeni government accountable. I will even join Satan if I have to, in order to get revenge for my wounded son, says an angered father from Ja'ad. I will show you a little video that I was able to take when I was there. And it's just a quote that I feel like really resonates with the situation. I don't know if you'll be able to hear the sound well, but
when people feel as if they have no say in their country and that they're being, and that their country locally is being controlled by foreigners, that's something that's obviously going to breed resentment. There's no question about that. That's anywhere. So Yemen is obviously not unique.
للأسف السياسة الأمريكية ما زالت ترى اليمن ساحة حرب. لا تتعامل مع اليمن كدولة فيها شعب، فيها أحلام، فيها مشاريع حياة، فيها إنسان يعيش ويريد أن يحيا بكل كرامة وعزة.
At certain events in the past 3 or 4 years, when you look at things like botched strikes, continued resentment of a lot of American policies, there's a case of even if it's not necessarily breeding Al-Qaeda, it's breeding a large degree of mistrust.
أعرف الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بالطائرة التي بدون طيار، التي ضربت الأبرياء في أبيان، في المعجلة، وفي الجنوب، في المناطق الجنوبية، وفي مارب.
I wouldn't just credit it to the drone strikes. I think it's been a long series of incidents of policies that are seen by the Yemeni people as being against the interests of Yemen. So before these drone strikes were the news of the day, for example, the US government's policy of supporting Saleh's regime was a fantastic example.
They usually talk about the universal values of humanity and human rights and all of that. But when you come to Madrid, when you come to see their actual doings, it speaks for itself. It's not what they're promoting.
I mean, it's not the America that I grew up learning about. But I think America has really totally lost this war. Because if you trash your own very values, if you rip up the Constitution, and you destroy the very freedoms that you say define America, just for the purpose of this so-called war against terror, then you've really won the war for Al-Qaeda, isn't it? Because there's no longer an America that's recognizable.
They tell their people whom they're taking the taxes from, they tell them that this is what we promote. We promote democracy, we promote human rights, but what you see at the end of the day is that they kill people with that money.
The metaphor of what US counterterrorism policy right now is about, it's really about killing all those people that are infected with the virus, but doing absolutely nothing about the virus itself. What the US policy right now largely is about is to kill every single one who is infected by this ideology. I.e., if you accept Al-Qaeda ideology, you're a dead man. Without any necessity for due process that cherish American value, without necessity for any manner of legal protection, without necessity for courts. So in that situation, Obama, or any American president after him, is a judge, he's a jury, he's the executioner.
There is a case to be made that military actions are necessary to some extent. At the same time, they'll solve nothing if things aren't being taken to solve the roots of the problem. Development aid, changes in education, or the way that religion is taught, or things like that.
الفكر لا يحارب إلا بفكر. إذا كان هناك فكر متطرف لن يتم اجتثاثه إلا بفكر معتدل يصل إلى قلوب الناس. عقولهم. غير هذا لا أعتقد أن مشكلة القاعدة أو أي مشكلة مستقبلية ستحل أبدا بالسلاح وبالعنف وبارتكاب الجرائم في حق الشعوب بشكل عام.
Despite a significant degree of resentment against American policy in Yemen, I think as an American, I've generally felt like I've been welcomed here. I've been the subject of a great degree of hospitality in Yemen. When you look back, it's clear that Yemenis are generally able to differentiate American people from American policy, which is specifically nice to someone who lives here. And at the same time, comparing it, looking from here to there or there to here. I mean, when you think of the general American image of what Yemenis are like and what this country is like, you know, as if all Yemenis are a bunch of terrorist savages hell-bent on, you know, popping bombs in the United States or something.
كشباب يمني نرى أمريكا بنظرة إيجابية. نحن نحب الشعب الأمريكي ونتعامل معه بشكل طبيعي. نحب الأغاني الأمريكية، نلبس ملابس أمريكية، الأطعمة الأمريكية موجودة ونحبها كثيرا.
Currently the mood is against the US government's policies. But the danger of it being magnified into a general sort of karahiyya, hatred for Americans in general, that day might come if nothing is done to counter the current feelings of large segments of the Yemeni population. That risk certainly is there.
من أهم الأشياء التي أريد أن يتغير أن تعتبر أن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بشر وناس يعيشون على الأرض، من حقهم أن يعيشوا بعزة وكرامة مهما اختلفنا ومهما كانت لنا طريقتنا للتخطيط لحياتنا الخاصة على أرضنا التي ولدنا عليها. أريد أن تحترم سيادتنا وأن تتعامل معنا معاملة كند وكشريك لبناء الحياة ولبناء هذه الأرض التي نعيش عليها جميعا.
I really find it amusing to read American commentary, you know, about how lawless Yemen, you know, because I find at the end of the day that the tribal laws which underpin Yemen in itself have predate Islam. They're all, you know, thousands of years old, and they're still being used, and they're still largely respected. And really, the opinion I think of myself as a lawyer from Yemen is that from this perspective, from this part of the world, it's America that's lawless right now. You know, all execution without trial, lack of necessity for habeas corpus. This definition of a militant is any male of military age who happens to be that male of military age who happens to be in that area and who's killed, and there's no evidence after his death that he's innocent. I mean, I would call it Stalinist. You know, it's the kind of language legally and politically that you expect to hear from like a communist Soviet Union before, you know, where people speak seriously about it and they mean it and they might even believe it, but the rest of the world knows this is absolute rubbish. You know? That's what I see coming from Obama. You know, for Harvard law professor, he doesn't really know his law very well.
So I just wanted to give you a perspective about what Yemeni youth are thinking about U.S. policy in Yemen, and also American voices that are in Yemen. So now I'll pass the mic over to Mohammed. He'll talk to you a little bit more.
You almost said everything. What can I say? I'm Mohammed from Yemen. I'm an activist, and I used to be in the Chain Square in Sana'a in 2011. I came here by a program sponsored by State Department. So, well, yeah. So, I want to convey a message of a Maghrebi girl who lost her entire family by a drone strike. She said, "America is nothing for me other than a drone and a bomb." I mean, it's sad. I know the Americans are not that evil. And I know another story of a 16-year-old boy. What's his name? The Awlaki son? Abdurrahman Awlaki. He's an American citizen, and he killed because his father recognized as a terrorist. So I don't know if it's that the real image of the United States for us as Yemenis. So So Obama was like, we were supporting him. We loved Obama, but we didn't know that he's worse than Bush in terms of the foreign policy. Now I want you to understand that what creates terrorism in the MENA region is the foreign policy of the United States.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of Americans. I came here like in the beginning, in the middle of the march. They are very nice. I love them all. When they asked where I'm from, I said I'm from Yemen. Well, oh, which state? I think it's state by its own. So I would like to thank you all and thank Rooj for presenting the drone. If you have any question, you can pass it along. So thank you very much.
I'm sure a lot of you heard Fidaa speak earlier. She is from Gaza, and she spoke a little about drones, and we wanted to give her the opportunity to present another human face of war.
Yes, I am Fidaa, and I'm Palestinian, born and raised in Gaza for 23 years. I'm 24 right now, and I've lived my whole life under occupation, and I experienced the war, and I survived, and yeah, and I also like speaking of the drones. I'm so pleased to be here and to see like how people are against the drones because they are horrible. When you live with a constant buzzing sounds overhead, sometimes the whole especially during the night, you cannot sleep, you cannot study, you cannot do anything because of the constant buzzing. Sometimes it will last for 24/7 a day, just buzzing. So, and only actually, because since the siege was imposed on Gaza in 2006, I forgot how my life looked like before the siege. All what I remember is I experienced war in 2008, 2009, and when I came to the state, I realized how we normalized the life of injustice, and how I was dehumanized as a human being, and how I was deprived of my basic human rights. Even the simple thing, you cannot sleep because of drones. Sometimes we don't have running water in the house. You don't have electricity. Sometimes it would last for days. I don't know why. Is it because we're Palestinians from Gaza? So when I came to the state and I met people and I started talking about the narrative that is missing from the mainstream, people were really shocked, especially Americans. They didn't know that such a narrative existed. So this actually, when I during the war actually, when we don't know you're gonna be you would survive or not, my English was, I didn't know any English, so I said I will study English if I survive. So when I came, so if I had the chance to speak, so I would speak in a language people would understand me, and people would know what happened to us in 2008, Operation Castle, which is the war. And now, while I'm standing here, I didn't plan, I didn't know about this, I didn't know that I would speak. So while I'm standing here, I just remembered that I vowed 4 years ago, and now I'm here, I'm speaking my experience as a person who witnessed war and who survived. And thank you very much for your effort. Thank you for standing for a good cause, and for saying no to drones, no to war, for asking for peace. So thank you very much.
hope each of you will hear from all of us a heartfelt, we're sorry, we're so very sorry for the suffering caused. Do we have any questions for our panelists?